Hey there. All right, welcome back. We are going to dig into the core conditions of a good coaching relationship. I'm on page 8 of the Life Care Training Workbook. And the first one that we're going to look at is unconditional positive regard. Now, you know, uh, the guy who, so these core conditions are based on the core conditions from core conditions of a therapeutic relationship, which come from person centered counseling theory, which was created by Carl Rogers. He actually studied to be a pastor for a while, but then he had some questions about faith and became a psychologist instead. His theory was that if you just sit with people, you listen to them, you hold them in unconditional positive regard, build a good rapport where there's trust, you're congruent with them, meaning that your insides match your outsides. Um, and you just, let the client talk through their things and you come alongside them and support them. That his idea was in that sort of an environment, the client can't help but grow. They're just going to naturally grow. The metaphor he uses in some of his writings is if you put a plant, I think he called it a potato plant, if you put a potato plant in the corner of a dark basement, and there's just one window, the plant will grow towards the light. I think there's some merit in that, but I think that also, there's plenty of people who, rather than grow towards the light, they cling to the darkness. And you see it all the time in addiction, the world of addictions. I've done a lot of work in the world of addictions, both in 12-step recovery groups and also in my clinical practice and in coaching for that matter. And yeah, it can be a real struggle for someone who's in the grips of addiction to grow towards the light. And there's a lot in their way, a lot of denial, a lot of lying, a lot of hiding. And it doesn't matter how empathetic you are, if they don't want to change, they're going to cling to that darkness. So person-centered theory is great, and there's a lot to it that we're going to use, but I'm also going to give you a lot of other tools to use. So that said, we're going to look at these core conditions of a good coaching relationships. This is maybe a good time to say that, I mentioned person-centered therapy. Well, there's person-centered coaching. Later, we'll talk about cognitive behavioral therapy. Actually, we won't be talking about cognitive behavioral therapy. We'll be talking about cognitive behavioral coaching. So pretty much every therapeutic modality that there is, there's now a coaching counterpart to that modality. And the reason being that the tools for coaching and the tools for therapy are very similar. It's just you deploy them in different situations. Coaching is present and future oriented. Therapy deals with present and future, but they will also go back to the past for hidden things, unconscious things, blind spots, unresolved trauma, stuff like that, that prevent someone from moving forward in life. And so as you're working with your clients, if you seem stuck, if there seems to be just something missing, they don't seem to be able to move forward, or if you discover, unresolved trauma or just something in the past that is, really significant and keeping them is going to be a hindrance to them as they move forward, that's when you would make a referral to a therapist. And doesn't mean you have to stop being their coach, but they need to work with a therapist if they're going to camp out in the past for a lengthy amount of time. In coaching, we do go into the past, but we don't go into the past for healing. We go into the past to understand context, to understand where the client has been, where they are now, and where they're wanting to go in the future, just to know what we're dealing with. It also will deepen your rapport and your trust with them as you dip into the past a little bit to understand their context. And we'll talk about more about that when we get into the history taking section a little bit later on in the course. But for now, just letting you know, person-centered therapy, person-centered coaching. Dialectical behavior therapy, in dialectical behavior therapy, there's actually is a skills component, and we'll do some of those DBT skills as coaching skills. Cognitive behavioral therapy, the counterpart is cognitive behavioral coaching. So here we are with person-centered skills, person-centered coaching skills. Unconditional positive regard is the first one. I like to say that's just kind of a fancy way of saying that you love your client. It's a sort of way to operationalize love. In other words, what is love? It's, at least in some part, it's holding your client in unconditional positive regard. That's what Jesus does for us, is no matter where we've been, no matter what we've done, no matter how we're struggling, he loves us. It's unconditional. It's not merit-based. He loves us because we are his children, we are his creation, and nothing can ever change that. If you've been a parent and you have a child, and even if that child has struggled, you still love them. You may be upset with them, there may be consequences to their behavior, but you don't stop loving them. That's how God is with us. That's how we seek to be with our clients. So that is unconditional positive regard. And I'll tell you, when you do the history form, I've never had trouble holding someone in unconditional positive regard, no matter what they've done, once I've done their history form. Even if they're currently doing something that I don't really like, there's a part of me that just thinks it's wrong, and sometimes it is wrong, but I know where that behavior is coming from because I know their history. I know what's been done to them. I know what has happened to them that they didn't ask for, the conditions that they were born into that they didn't ask for, things they needed that they never got because of where they were born, and maybe it's a family of origin thing or something that happened to them as kids or whatever. Once you understand that, then it kind of makes sense that they're struggling with the things that they're struggling with, and you can have compassion for them rather than judging them. And it doesn't mean that you don't try interventions to help them change, but at least you can stay out of judging, condemning, things like that. There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ. And so even if they're really struggling, you can still hold them in unconditional positive regard. And I would encourage you to do so, because it's going to build your trust, it's going to build your rapport, it's going to keep them coming back, so that you actually have an opportunity to have influence into their life so that they can change and stop doing the things that you wish they wouldn't do, and things that are wrong. If you start judging and condemning, you're going to lose that opportunity, because you're going to breach the relationship and they're not going to come back. Your clients will vote with their feet, okay? And there's plenty of research out there that says that coaching is just as effective as therapy. And a big factor across the board is the quality of the coach-client relationship, or in the therapy, in the context of therapy, it's the counselor-client relationship. But it doesn't matter whether it's a coach or a counselor. If you have a quality relationship with your client and they feel like they're being helped when they see you, they don't care what the letters are after your name, okay? They want to be with somebody who's going to help them, somebody who they feel they can trust, that they have a good rapport with. That is 50% of what makes for success in coaching is the quality of the coach-client relationship. The other 50% is the level of client motivation. One of the other modalities that we'll draw from is motivational interviewing. That's a therapeutic modality, but it is used quite broadly these days, and in healthcare especially. Doctors use it, nurses use it, and the world of mental health uses it, and coaches use it. There's motivational interviewing for coaches. So motivational interviewing is a way to increase client motivation, and the principles of MI, motivational interviewing, are woven into this course and many of the tools that you'll learn. And so, we will get to that, but quality of the relationship, quality of client motivation, you're going to learn all of that stuff in this course, and those are the two components that make for a successful coaching relationship. So, but, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I tend to do that. For now, unconditional positive regard, very, very important to hold your clients in it. Make sure you read this section and do the journaling that is a part of it. Okay. In the next video, we will talk about empathy, which is the second core condition, of a successful coaching relationship. So I will see you there.